All right, and we are live. Good afternoon, everyone. We are a little late starting today, but life happens, so we're trying to keep up with life as it happens. I am your girl, Valerie, Sistah-talk with Valerie, your chocolate smoothie, always on Untapped Music Radio, which airs 24/7 music, sound music. But how about Sistah-talk airs every Friday at 7:30 with a replay on Saturday at 6. This is being brought to you by AIM, which is International Media. So this is a new sort of sponsor for us. I'm getting used to it. So if I don't say it correctly, please forgive me. But I'm very excited to be here tonight because we're going to talk to Miss Miasha Gilliam L. And I don't know if any of you know, but Generational Words, which is a business of my daughters and myself, we help produce films and write books. And Miasha
Mhm.
came to us. It was really, I'm going to tell you, we have a mutual friend, Mark Durwright, and Mark Durwright passed away, but
Mhm.
it is still amazing to me how many lives Mark has impacted and affected. And
Yeah.
he's been gone now. Lord have mercy, it's been at least a year, but I still feel the impact
Mm.
of Mark. Like talking to people and just the things I just when I get to heaven, I'm gonna say, boy, did you know that you was gonna make that kind of impact on people? So Miasha knew Mark and I knew Mark, but we didn't know each other. We were both at his going home service, and even
Yeah.
then it really didn't click that, hey, we might have seen each other before, but we both know Mark. And I don't know really how it happened, but Miasha reached out to me and said, hey, I wrote this book. I want to do a film about it. And we talked about Mark, and I was like, wow, yeah, we got to do that.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
remember that, Maisha?
I do. I remember.
Oh my God. And so from that, this powerful, I'm going to tell you, I am so proud of this body of work. I've done things before, like I've done the web series, I've done some short films with my daughter, but I am so proud of this body of work because it's really powerful. It is really well put
Mhm.
together, and it's a
Yes.
great story. You guys are in for a treat when you see this. So I want to start by introducing Maisha and giving her an opportunity to give a little background. Again, we are sponsored by Armstrong International Media, AIM, and I am your chocolate smoothie who is on Untapped Music Radio every Friday at 7:30. Hi, Maisha. Introduce yourself to everyone.
I am Dr. Miasha Gilliam L. I am a three-time best-selling author, now executive producer of a film entitled Miracles of Life that is coming soon. I'm also a mother of six, a wife, a pastor, and a registered nurse. So I am excited to be here. Thank you for having me on the show.
So I have to tell y'all, right? So when my daughter Key and I talked about sort of we sat down and really met together about what this was going to look like, how we were going to write it, how we were going to frame it, and how we were going to put it together. One of the
Hmm.
things we said is that, man, God is all up in this, right? Because we felt so honored, first of all, that you asked us to
Hmm.
write it. And so many things that were just nothing but God happened during the filming,
Yeah.
during the rehearsal. It was amazing, right? I want to get into that, but first I want folks to know what this film is based on because a lot of people don't know what cardiomyopathy is. That is what stopped Maisha's heart.
Yeah.
What resonates for me is that my daughter had cardiomyopathy after she had her first child. My grandson
Yeah.
is now 11 years old, but that was the first time that I had heard about it. And all the doctor
Yeah.
said to me was, this affects women of color predominantly more than anyone else. People lose their life from it. And
Yes.
that's all he said. I'm like, what? What are you talking about? Like, my daughter is like, she's 36 now. She was like in her 20s. What are you saying? She has a heart disease. So, how
Yeah.
did you find out about it, Maisha?
Well, I never was really diagnosed with it until, like most of us, we end up in the ER in a state of fluid overload or pulmonary edema, which is it's a suffocation disease. It's like you're drowning inside of your own body, and what we call it in the community is PPCM, peripartum cardiomyopathy. So it occurs in the last couple of months, and after delivery, it can occur as well. And one of the astonishing facts about it is that every 3 minutes, a young woman is dying from it. A lot of times it is misdiagnosed. We in our community know a lot about preeclampsia. So a lot of times it is diagnosed, it's labeled as preeclampsia, but they're two different things. And so by it going misdiagnosed, they don't do the appropriate test because the test is not available here in the United States. One of the richest countries in the world, the test that can prevent this or allow them to see it ahead of time is not available here. We have a BNP test, which is a peptide test, which can tell, if you are genetically inclined to have like heart disease or things like that. But we don't have the specific testing that we need for the obstetricians to do. Because when you think about the heart, you think about the cardiologist. And obstetricians are not trained that highly in the heart. And so going and fighting this feat and going on this journey and figuring how to get obstetricians to perform lab work that a cardiologist reads is an issue. And this is why it is misdiagnosed because a simple blood test and a simple echocardiogram, which they do not offer you during pregnancy, could prevent this from happening.
So,
So that's why I wanted to do this film to bring awareness to it. Because, like you said, I never learned this in nursing school, never heard about it in nursing school. And I'd never heard about it my whole entire pregnancy going to a high risk clinic until after I had my cardiac arrest and I coded and woke up and then they started treating.
see, and that's the part that blows my mind because, when you said that you feel like you're drowning. That's what my daughter Talia was saying. She was like, Mom, this is right after she had Takai, right? She kept saying,
Yeah,
every time I lay down, I feel like I'm drowning.
yeah,
And, she had just had a baby. So I'm thinking, oh, it's something that has to do with postpartum or, it's
right.
something that has to do with you just delivered. And she kept complaining about it. When she went to the emergency room, I walk in the ER and they have drained pints of fluid off of
Yes,
her.
yes,
Unbelievable, like pints of fluid. And I'm like, well, how would you even know to be tested for that? You wouldn't know.
right.
It's not something that she would have known about. Even after the other thing that happened is they told her not to get pregnant again
Yeah.
until another year. And she ended up getting pregnant with the twins. And then she got pregnant
Oh,
again.
wow.
With her last
Wow.
pregnancy, she almost died again because she
Yeah.
hemorrhaged. And I'm telling you, my daughter, I was in Boston, and my daughter described the hemorrhaging as they had to give her like 3 or 4 transfusions. That's how bad the
Wow.
hemorrhaging was. But they didn't know what was going on. They still didn't give me a clear answer about why is she losing blood like that.
And that's what happens most of the time we get brushed off because, we as women, we know our own bodies. And so a lot of times it falls on deaf ears. For me, being a medical professional, it fell on deaf ears because I was being overly cautious because I was a nurse. I was anxious. I was paying too much attention to things, and every pregnancy is different. So that's what I was being told the entire time. I knew that I was swollen. I knew that something wasn't right, but I didn't know what it was. I couldn't pinpoint what it was, but I had this feeling of doom or gloom over me. Like I felt like something was going to happen, but I just couldn't tell you when it was going to happen or how it was going to happen or any of those things. But I kept telling them something's wrong. My blood pressure, please recheck it. Please do this, check this out. I never had this swelling before. I was feeling like this feeling of indigestion consistently in my chest. It wasn't pain, but it was indigestion. So what did they do? Prescribe an antacid for me. So everything was falling on deaf ears. And I like to say, thank God for the ER doctors, because at least they're a little bit versed on it. At least when somebody comes in, they kind of know what they're looking at, some of them. But a lot of them still don't either. And a lot of cardiologists, once you are, this is a lifetime thing because I am still dealing with the effects of it. And this happened in 2012. So I'm still dealing with the after effects of the damage that was done to my heart back then.
So why is it, and maybe there's no answer for this, but why does it impact or affect women of color more than any other race?
They're still doing research on that because they're beginning to think it's something genetic with it. And so they're doing a lot of research studies. Dr. James Fett is one of the doctors that I came in contact with by starting the peripartum cardiomyopathy group on Facebook. And he helps out a lot with it. He's dedicated his life to it, basically. And he is on doing missions work actually in Haiti, dealing with this issue now. And they have the test in Haiti, and he's the one that tells us that this test will show the markers to prevent this disease or this from occurring to women. But there's bills that have to be passed. There's things that have to go on first in Congress and the Senate and all of these things. It's very political. And people, the what we're saying as survivors is not being taken seriously, not by the doctors, not by the politicians, until it happens to them and it hits home with them.
So is there like a survivors group? Where are the survivors? So the fact that a lot of people, because I know that since it happened to my daughter, I don't know that my daughter's like met someone else who's dealt with it or reached out to
Yeah.
someone else who's dealt with it. Have you been able to do that?
Yes, well, she's since become a member of my group. I have PPCM Healthy Heart on Facebook. And that is a group where we come on and we dialogue with one another. We ask about different things that may be happening to us. We also share research information that we find out about this disorder. I met another young lady who is she's a Hollywood producer. Her name is Lindsay Stoloff. She's doing a documentary that is actually on YouTube right now. I watched the first episode last night, and she's with the PPCM Fund. And she actually coded 3 times and had her heart to stop 3 times and had to be put on ice in order for them to keep her from going, her brain from dying. And so she's teamed up with me, and we've also teamed up with another young lady named Brianna Henderson, who had the same thing happen to her. And she has the organization called Let's Talk PPCM. So we've all kind of united to find kind of form this correlation with each other to try to bring more awareness to this disorder and to try to spread it as much as we can, the information. And we are members of other groups on Facebook as well that have survivors. Like there's a PPCM group for people over 40. There's one for people dealing with life after it. And then there's one that's just strictly about medicines, and people take pictures if they have different things going on, like swelling, and they can get advisement from Dr. Fett, who is a member of that group. So it's very helpful.
Yeah, I know that one of the things that Talia still deals with is high blood pressure. Like I'm always on her
Yeah,
because I don't think that she takes good enough care of herself, right? Because I tell you have a heart condition, you can't be
yeah,
a lot. But I think part of it with her is the fact that she doesn't really know anybody else that has dealt with it. And it must be difficult to deal with it like by yourself,
it
like
is.
everything she's gone through. And really, after she had her first child, they monitored her for a year and said
Hmm.
things were good. But then she had the twins after that, and then another child. And I think the damage, no one's ever really kind of looked at what damage that could have done.
And one of the things that I learned from being in the group and learned from Dr. Set is that when that occurs to us, we should have an initial MRI done because that will be the marker, after we're considered recovered. You get another MRI done and they can see if anything has taken place to your heart that's changed. And so if he hadn't have made me aware of that, even though I see a cardiologist all the time, if he did not make me aware of that I needed to ask for MRI, they would have never discovered that I had scar tissue. I would have never been sent to an electrophysiologist, and I would have never had an ablation done. So,
All right, you
it's
talking doctor talk.
something.
What's an ablation? Tell my audience.
Ablation is when they actually go up into your heart with a thin wire. They thread it up through your growing area or where your underwear line is, and they go in there and they actually trigger arrhythmias, or if you've ever heard of like AFib, they trigger your heart to do abnormal things like beat really fast, and then they slow it down. And in those areas, they're looking at the electricity of the heart, so they're burning those areas that are disrupted and causing those fast beats to your heart. And they're redirecting the whole electrical system of your heart. So it's a very intricate and delicate procedure. And, like with my procedure, they actually put me into an arrhythmia, because that happens sometimes because they're messing around in your heart, so that happens sometimes. But the ideal is to prevent this negative arrhythmia from happening and get you back into a state of normalcy. But I would have never had it done if, because even my cardiologist doesn't treat me like I'm a PPCM patient or like I'm a peripartum cardiomyopathy patient. He treats me like a regular patient that has a heart disorder. And it's different. It's very different.
Wow,
So the awareness is not there.
it's definitely not there, and it just feels like I don't know what needs to happen, but it feels like in our community specifically, because this happens to women of color, you
Yes.
know, postpartum and during pregnancy, and a lot of women of color are just having children not knowing. We
Yeah.
Some women look for things like, like you said, maybe your sugar is up, maybe there's hypertension, maybe there's, like you said, when you're swelling, but not
Yeah.
something going on with your heart.
And Lindsay has joined this fight, and she's a Caucasian female. And so a lot of the people in my group are Caucasian women because I guess that, like you said, a lot of us aren't aware, so we don't go looking for these groups to get more information. And, it's like even getting, a lot of us are fearful of finding out things like that. And you'll get people to say, well, you're trying to scare me. No, I'm not trying to scare you. I'm trying to make you aware so that when you go to the doctor, you know what to ask for. You know how to ask for something, and let them know that something's wrong. Because I wish somebody would have told me to ask for a blood test, that could have prevented this. I wish somebody would have told me, hey, can you do this BMP? No, it's not the one that will show everything, but at least it's a start. Can we start here with me not feeling well? Instead of you ignoring me, can you listen? You know, I got prescribed everything under the sun other than having them to listen to what I was actually saying. And I was even sent home with a high blood pressure. So, you send me home with high blood pressure, and what do you expect is going to happen? Everything is about nutrition. Go home and eat correctly. Don't take on a low sodium diet. Well, it had nothing to do with salt. It was my lungs that were misfunctioning in my heart.
But let me tell you, but
Yeah,
God. So
exactly.
when you hear that someone's heart stopped beating, that they just stopped breathing and was coded for 10 minutes and came back, you're like, wow. But I'm telling you that as we were doing this film, so in the film, without giving all the goodies away, there is a spiritual sort of awakening happening at the same time.
Hmm.
Like you knew that something big was going to happen,
Yeah,
um, and you related it to your son, like you were prophesied to. God spoke
yeah.
to you. Talk a little bit about that.
That's what I love about God. And during our first conversation, I remember sharing that with you that God is so strategic at how he does things, and how he implements things to happen and how he positions people. And, the fact that he knows every hair on each one of our heads. So he knows our inclinations. He knows, those things that we worry about. And, he helps to prepare us. And he knows that I don't like being surprised by things. And so it was amazing to me that, I knew I was not dreaming. I knew I was having outer body experiences with what I was seeing that was going to take place. And so he prepared me because he probably knew that if he didn't, when that happened, I would panic, and because he allowed me to see and have a glimpse and allowed me the assurance that I'm with you, I'm going to be with you. You're going to be okay. I'm going to be there with you. And because of that, I was able to get out of my own thinking when it happened. And I was able to take myself to a place spiritually to where I was able to connect back with him, even though I was in distress. And I was able to get my mind there because I always say, change your thoughts, change your life. And for me, that is such a reality because I wouldn't even be here today if I was not able to redirect my thoughts at that moment when those things started happening to me physically. I wouldn't even be here because I would have panicked and I would have made things 10 times worse.
But you thought it was something that was going to happen to your baby. Is that right?
No, I knew it was something that was going to happen to me because of the depiction of what I saw. The vision that I saw, it was me and my husband. So I knew it was me that it happened to. And it just, I didn't know what to do with it because here I am 8 months pregnant. So I'm like, okay, is this the enemy trying to scare me? What is this? And then it just was a sickling effect of people just, being sent by God just to tell me certain things and to instruct me to do certain things. And that's why I said he's strategic because I was like doubting Thomas. I was like, no, that's probably just the enemy trying to make me scared, of something, trying to put fear on me because I was a diehard believer. I have a lot of faith in God, and I'm like, why would this happen to me? I'm following you. I'm doing your will. I'm doing what you say do. So why would this happen to me? I couldn't understand it. I'm healthy. I eat right. Why would something happen to me? What's the point of that?
Right.
I don't want to be Joe Bet. No, I don't want that. So, so he showed me though, and then he confirmed that it was him showing me through the prophet, through the prophetess at the church, and I couldn't deny it. I couldn't deny it. I just had to come to grips with it, and I still didn't know when. I had no clue when. and I
So,
didn't see the end result of what was going to happen. So I just saw the initial reality of me laying there.
and that's
And
also important because God placed some powerful people around you,
yes,
even
he
in
did.
the church that you were going to. That
Yes,
there's some miracles. So they and I want you to tell about how they came in and prayed over you. But I have to share the experience that I had. So as we
yes,
were going through this filming, Key and I kept having these conversations about how we felt God just kind of cloaked around everything. And I remember
yes.
the day that we came to rehearse in the church, I could feel the hairs sticking up.
Mm,
The spirit was so thick. I was like, the first thing that happened is that as I was standing there, I'm trying to direct and I'm looking at the audience,
yeah.
and people were coming up to me saying, "Hey, let me tell you about my near death experience." One, the mother
Yeah.
of the church came up and was telling me about how she almost lost her life and God saved her life. There was
Twice.
another young man that came
Yeah.
up and was telling me about how he almost lost his life and God saved his life. Then there was a gentleman that said, "Look over there at the pulpit. There was a bunch of canes up there." He was like, "Yeah,
Yep.
those belong to people who used to need those canes to walk, but they got delivered here." Then he
Yeah.
started talking about his wife, right? His wife was, I think she was like the mother of the church or something.
Mhm.
And he says, yeah. First he says she's here, right? And I'm like, all this stuff is happening. I'm like, I thought she passed away. He's like, no, she's
Mhm.
here. And he goes, and she was there because I almost lost my life too. Something had happened to him. And I'm hearing all this, and I felt the spirit from the bottom of my toes, like all
Yes.
my body. And I couldn't contain it. And then the pastor had the nerve to come up to me and say, "Have you seen the wall in the music room?" I was like, "What wall?" He said, "Yeah, when the spirit gets high, the wall leaks oil." I was
Yes.
done. I
They have
mean,
a video of it. They have a video of it. Oil just
it.
coming out of the wall.
I believe it. And then they
And
and then the worship, and then they blew the horn. There was you God just he just laid, he came and he rested. If you did not feel the power and movement of God in that church, something was wrong. So that's
and
the
it is.
kind of worship, and that's the kind of faith, and that's the kind of spirit that was holding
Yes.
you.
Yes. It is truly a deliverance ministry. We have seen miracle after miracle after miracle happen there. And it is amazing because people walk in to the building like you and they say it feels different in here. There's something about here. There's something about this place. And we've had people to walk in out for the street and just melt, you know, and just fall at the altar, and it's amazing, to see it happen and to see the humility, that is there in the place because there's so many survivors, there's so many people who God spared their life. Even after what happened to me, I remember going to church a couple of Sundays later. I was able to actually go to church. And one of the mothers, the pastor's mother, who is an evangelist, I mean, she is powerful, Mother Flowers. And I couldn't talk, I couldn't sing, I couldn't do anything. Like my voice was gone. And she called me up to the front, and when I tell you she prayed for me, and that next Sunday I was singing on the praise team, because she is a little powerhouse. She's 80 some years old and she is a little powerhouse. And her faith, I learned so much from her. So much I learned from her. And every opportunity I get, whenever I see her, I try to glean from her, and learn. She's died. She's lost her life. And God restored her and brought her back to life. She had somebody to come in her house and try to kill her, and the Holy Spirit blocked it. The woman had a gun ready to take her life.
Listen, I, all I could have done was surrender. I was so full. The power of God
Yes,
was all I just had to surrender. And then when you hear your story, so one of the things,
yes,
hey Terry, my girlfriend Terry said, she said, "Wow, God is still in the miracle business." Yes, He is.
yes,
One of the things about reliving the story
yes,
that really touched my heart was your pastor, the pastor's wife, the mother of the church. Everybody said, "We're not. This is not an acting for us. Like we lived through this." But
right,
what really pricked me was your husband, because when we did the scene where the doctor came out and said we lost her, we every time he was so emotional. Every time he lost it,
yeah,
every time he cried, because he was like, "Cause I remember." Like what it was like.
yeah,
I remember. And then he showed me the picture that he had of you when you were in the coma. And
yeah,
that just like it just I don't know, it just melted my heart.
yeah. It was pretty bad for them. It was really bad for them. Um, I think he had kind of an inclination of how bad it was when they came in and they told him I was gone. And I think at that point, he kind of just, I guess he didn't know what God was doing. And it was like, okay, God, you're going to have to get me through this part. And thank God that Mama Pat was there and, Apostle and them were there because he would have been alone going through that with a new baby. Everybody picked up. I mean, my nursing school friends, these are people I just graduated with 2 years prior. Had not talked to them every day or anything. And they're coming and they're doing round the clock, bringing food to my family. And God even strategically positioned them in the ICUs in the emergency room as well. So I had somebody with me that knew me, that was a prayer warrior. Each step of the way, I had somebody with me. And when he says that he covers us, he covers us. He covers us. It didn't, I was afraid at the time, but he was covering me the entire time, making sure that I was victorious,
Mm.
making sure that my life was spared. He knew what was going to happen before it happened. And, I'm just so thankful that I did have those people around me that were around me that knew how to pray and
Yeah.
that they didn't give up. And that was one of the things that God gave me instructions was to tell the prophetess, to tell my husband, no matter what it looks like, no matter what they say, do not give up and continue to read. And my husband was guided by the Holy Spirit as to the book to read to me. And he read that healing book to me with those healing scriptures. And they wrapped me in the prayer shawl. And, the nurses, some of them not even believers, made sure I stayed wrapped in the prayer shawl. And for anybody that's a medical professional, you know that they don't do that in the ICU because their concern is those monitors. Their concern is that your blood pressure is stable. Their concern is that you are kept alive, not your spiritual well being. That's not their concern. And so for them to make sure that that prayer shawl stayed on me night and day around the clock says a whole lot.
Listen, everything about it. Even the fact that when they come and say to your family, your spiritual family and your husband, she's gone, Their
Yeah.
response is to pray for the folks in the waiting room. Who
Yeah.
does that? You gonna come and tell me that my loved one is gone, and my response is we're gonna pray for everybody up in here.
When I heard that, I said that was the ultimate selflessness. That was, they put themselves to the side and they knew that regardless, that God had a mission at that hospital. He had a plan for that hospital at that time. And those people, I had a lot of family members there that didn't believe and didn't worship God or didn't honor God or hadn't given their lives to God. And for them to be able to see a miracle take place totally transformed some of them. It made a huge difference in their life, in the way they interact with each other, in the way they interact with me, who prior to that they didn't really talk to or deal with. Now they're calling me. They still call me about issues, problems, for guidance, for things. So it's like God opened a door and He used that situation to actually bring people towards Him. So it's like, for me, it's like I feel like it wasn't about me necessarily. It was about a vessel being used in order to bring people to the light of Christ. And
Hmm.
that's why I said I feel honored, which a lot of people don't understand. I feel honored that He trusted me enough to believe that I would be obedient when He showed me the vision, to believe that I would be obedient enough to trust Him, with everything, because I had nothing else. Only thing I could do was trust Him and say, "It is in your hands now. This is it. I'm totally out of control here. I don't have any control right now. Only thing I can control is this, my mind. That's all I can control. But right now, you are, like Tayshawn says, Lord, take the wheel. you know, from this point, you're leading, you're guiding, you're directing, and I'm just following your lead."
That's the kind of faith, Maisha, that we aspire to. That is the kind of faith that says, you know, I I describe it as, when you are thrown out of a plane and you
Hmm.
can see the ground and you're going at like warp speed, and your
Yeah,
face says, I am not going to smash my face into this ground. Like God is going to stop me before I hit the ground. That kind of faith. For someone to say, for God to say to you, something terrible is going to happen. For you have to trust, okay, I'm a new mother. I just had a baby. I have other
yeah,
children. For your husband to trust that you just told me that my wife is no longer here. But but
yeah,
yet, yay, will I trust God?
yeah,
It's not even about me right now. Let me go pray for somebody else. That's the kind of
yeah,
faith that we aspire to. And most of the time we miss the mark. But my God, that's faith.
yeah. I had no other route. I mean, I was like, either I love you and I trust you or I don't. There's no middle ground here now. Either it's all or nothing, as they say. It's all or nothing,
But
you
tell me
know?
about, I love the scene in the movie that and you guys, I'm telling you, I have to say it again, you are in for a treat when you see Miracles of Life. So what was so wonderful, another wonderful thing that happened is that, as Miasha was describing walking down the tunnel into this beautiful light, the videographer says, hey, I know where we can shoot that at. And they
Yes,
found this scene is, oh my God, my favorite scene. This tunnel, and you see Miasha walking down this tunnel towards the light, and like halfway down, this figure who represents Christ comes by and grabs her hand, and they begin to walk down together. Oh my God, I love that part. Tell me about, you remember that. You remember seeing yourself hovering over your body, and you remember
yes,
walking towards the light.
yes, I do. It was a feeling of euphoria. It was so peaceful. No worries, no cares. It was like I was not worried about what was happening back there to this physical body. I was just focused on getting to the beauty of that light. And I had the comforter next to me. So, that was even better because you have that guide there with you. And then that light was just so beautiful and inviting. It just was so magnificent. You're just like, I have to see what's on the other side. I have to get to that light. I have to get there, and it was just so beautiful. I will never forget the voice and the audible sound, and I will never forget that tunnel of light. I will never forget that. Even though I had all of those drugs that make you forget and all of these things, I still remember that.
So when you saw yourself sort of hovering over your body, what was that feeling like?
That was a very strange feeling because at first you're like, hey, what's going on? Hey, what's going on here? Like, why am I up here, like where the ceiling is? What is going on? And so I kept looking down, and as I was looking down, I realized that I was in the ER on the table, and they were like doing things, and that was me on the table. And the only way I realized that is because I was peering, and there was kind of a circle at the top, and it was so bright. And as I was peering, I had wings to open up, and three angels looked up at me, as if to say, mm-mm, you're not supposed to be here right now doing this, being nosy basically, you know. And as they did that, I saw them doing the chest compressions on me. I saw them trying to bring me back. And then that's when I was drawn back after the angels opened the wings and looked up at me. I was drawn back and I saw myself in that tunnel. So it almost reminded me of like Star Trek when they get beamed up, beam me up, Scotty kind of thing. And it was just like time was not time. It was like I had no idea of what time was or what the time span was from that point when I saw myself hovering to the point where I was in the tunnel. But little did I know I was 3 days in a coma. So
And
three
tell me
days
what
passed.
happened when you were almost at the end of the tunnel. What did the
I
voice
got
say?
drawn. I heard the not yet in such a powerful voice. I can't even tell you what that voice sounded like, but it was so powerful. It felt like it could shake the earth. Like it was just powerful. I could feel it throughout my entire body. And what I tell people is when I heard the not yet, I was kind of disappointed because I was like, now I have to go back and fight through all of these things with this physical body. I'm here in euphoria. I'm here. I'm about to see my father. And now I have to go back, you know? And I was a little upset. But at that point, I didn't know where I was going back to. I kind of didn't know where I was going to end up once I heard the not yet. I didn't know where I was going to be, where I was going to wake up at, what was going to happen. And when I heard the not yet, I I was like, I felt something coming out of my throat, and I was trying to open my eyes because my eyes had been closed for 3 days. So I'm trying to open my eyes, and the light is so bright. So I'm thinking I may possibly still be in this tunnel on the other side.
Mm.
And I'm opening my eyes, and then I have this Caucasian nurse standing there with these bright blue eyes, and I'm like, "Am I dead? Wait a minute. Oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute now." I'm like just confused. I'm like, "What is going on?" And I mouthed to him. He said, I asked him, "Am I dead?" And he said to me, "No, you made it. You made it." And they were pulling the vent out of my mouth at the time.
So there's a couple
So
of things I want to mention. One, I want to mention how long it took the ambulance to come in to get you, and I also want to talk about the anesthesiologist who helped to save your life. So the other piece of this is, and we didn't really have a chance to really show it throughout the movie, but Maisha
yeah,
crawled from her
yeah,
home bedroom all the way across the street to the neighbors because her husband wasn't home. He had left. So
yeah,
when this all started happening to her and she couldn't breathe, she was by herself. And she
yeah,
had to crawl across the street to get the neighbors to help her. But once she got across the street, it took the
yeah,
ambulance forever to get there. They did not give her
yeah.
oxygen. This is about how this is another piece of how we're treated as people of color.
When the hospital was at the time approximately no more than 10 to 12 minutes away from me. But it took the ambulance 45 minutes to get to me. Not only did it take the ambulance 45 minutes to get to me, I later found out that it wasn't even the normal rescue squad, it was a volunteer rescue squad. And they also made me walk to the gurney, and that is 101 for any healthcare professional. Airway, breathing, circulation. You do not make somebody who is in respiratory distress walk to a gurney. And so that all of those things contributed to my heart dying because I already was not getting enough oxygen. So as I'm not getting enough oxygen, my other organs are also suffocating and my heart's not beating correctly. So this fluid is steadily building up in my body and I'm drowning on the inside. I'm literally drowning on the inside. And, to be put in that situation and to be aware of what's supposed to be happening as a nurse is mentally very challenging because I didn't have enough energy to do anything about it. My husband, at the time, I'm in the ambulance and I couldn't even tell whether or not he was on the outside of the door. I couldn't kick the door. I couldn't do anything. I didn't have enough energy to do any of that. I had to try to conserve all of my energy in order for my life to be saved because I didn't even get oxygen when I got into the ambulance. I didn't
See,
get hooked to an EKG. I didn't get an IV started. And of course, now they'll say, how do you know that that didn't happen? And they'll blame it on the fact that I had a little bit of oxygen to my brain. But if I can tell you all the events that took place, that again was God, because most people would have passed out at that point from having that little bit of oxygen. By the time I got to the hospital, my heart percentage is supposed to be 55 to 70 some percent. I was at 10 to 15 when I arrived at the hospital. And then when I awakened, I was at 5 to 10%, which they couldn't even explain to me how I was still able to walk at all, how my organs were still functioning, because they said my kidneys should have shut down, my liver should have shut down. I should have been brain dead, but I wasn't. But God, I
but
wasn't.
God,
He protected all of my organs. He protected my mind. I came back sane, and a
how
lot
old
of
are you now?
women don't. I didn't have to get a defibrillator. I didn't have to get anything implanted in my chest. All done through medicine. And within a 2 year period, I was off of 13 pills and was on one pill. But God.
But God. And you're very healthy. You're very health conscious. That's the other thing. Tell us about the anesthesiologist and how he put his career. That's all God. Lord have mercy.
Oh yeah, that was the respiratory
Oh,
therapist.
the
He was
respiratory.
the
Yeah.
respiratory therapist who actually decided to have me on this ventilator. But his ideal was, she's a young woman. I am not going to go slowly with this because the slower I go with this, I'm killing her lungs. I am putting her body in all of this distress, and I think that she can handle and this aggressiveness that I'm about to do. And he totally went against his his standards and the guidelines of the hospital to make sure that I was able to get off of that ventilator in 3 days. He had me off of that ventilator breathing on my own in 3 days. 3 days, which was amazing. I went back to tell him thank you. And he told me, we had a conversation. When I was in that room after I had awakened, he would come in and give me my breathing treatment. And we would have these conversations. And he said to me, I knew that you could do it. He said, I knew that you would be okay at what I did. I said, well, what did you do? He said, well, I did some things that were unconventional. He said, but I knew you could handle it. And I was not going to let you die. And I was not going to let you stay on a ventilator for weeks at a time. I was not going to do that to you.
Mm.
And he lost his job behind it. I went back to visit him to tell him thank you, and he was gone. He was
But you
gone.
know what? That's what I know. That was his divine assignment. So he knew that
Yeah,
he was probably going to lose his job, but he was
yeah.
placed there by God. And even the other piece, y'all, is that the doctor, who was Maisha's doctor, actually acted in the film. He was
Yep.
so in awe of everything that happened and how God had moved. And he talked about it. He is such a gentle one. He's so, I love him.
Yeah. He is wonderful, Dr. Clifford Morris. He is awesome, an awesome cardiologist that listens. He is a holistic doctor, meaning that he does not prescribe pills for everything. He has a pill case in his office where you can see all the pills that he's helped people to recover and get away from through their lifestyle changes. He has a gym in his office.
It
He has a nutritionist in his office, and he helps people to understand that when you change your lifestyle, some of these things and some of these diseases and disabilities that we have, you can alleviate. So I absolutely love him. And when I talk to him, he's like, I'm on board. Whatever you need, even down to letting us use the office and everything. He has
exactly.
just been so awesome. And I've worked with him in the community, but never did I think that he thought so highly of me to allow me to do something like that. And I thank God again for that, because again he strategically aligned everything that needed to be, every attack that the enemy brought forth. God was there like Venus and Serena with the tennis racket, just knocking it out, just knocking it out. Okay, well,
Yes.
this is an obstacle, guess what, now it's not. This is an obstacle, guess what, now it's not. And I have to say that between you and Kia and Clairvoyance, you guys were brilliant, because everything that came up that could have disturbed the process, you guys' creativity and thoughtfulness in those situations, I don't know how we would have gotten beyond some of those situations if it weren't for your quick thinking and your creativity. So I would not have wanted to work with anybody else, and then having that spiritual base, that encouragement, that on the set when we're reacting these scenes, to have videographers to say, make sure you're spiritually, up to par when you come to the set today, because the enemy's gonna attack today. He's gonna be very upset today. To have that from directors and from, videographers, who has that? I mean, who has that? So I felt comfortable. I knew people were praying for me as I did my scenes. I knew people were praying for me as the enemy attacked. I could call and say, oh, today this is happening. What's going on? I would text you all the time. Hey, this happened today. This is what's going on. And immediately I'm like, people are like, I'm praying, I'm praying, I'm praying, I'm praying. So it was like God was just encamping. Y'all were my angels, the angels all around me as I went through this process. And that is exactly what I needed to get through it, because I had several attacks. My hands broke out. I mean, I fell and had to get stitches in my hand. I mean, it was so many things that took place during this process that we were just like, this has to be God. This has to be God. Because the enemy's trying too hard to stop it from coming to pass. I think you froze. Got
The
you in a
enemy
minute.
is
There you
really
go.
he's mad. He don't even want us talking now about it. Look at him. I don't know if we're still live, but let me say this because we're almost at time. One of the
Your
things,
sound is dragging.
huh?
Your sound is dragging. Like your voice is distorted.
Oh, that's the devil. Mad again.
Your voice is like real distorted.
I I don't know.
I wonder if maybe you have to go out and come back in. I don't know. Because the sound came back, but it just came back distorted.
Hmm. How about now? Still?
Mm-mm.
No. All right, enemy. Well, we got most of the story out, so we can end now because we got most of the story. We might have to have a part two, Miasha. We might have to have a part two.
Mm.
Can you hear me?
Let's see.
It's all good, devil. We already said what we gonna say. You can't stop it. We may need a part two. So I can still hear myself on Facebook Live. So here's the
Mm.
thing. I want to thank you, Miasha. Even though you can't hear me, I know that it's being filmed on Facebook Live. We will have a part two. Um, the enemy is not going to stop this story because it's too powerful. Miracles of Life,
Mm.
everyone, with is the real life story of Miasha Gilliam. This is the same thing that happened on set. That's when the videographers came and said to us, "Y'all need to be
Mm-hmm.
covered and prayed up because the enemy tried to take her life. Do you think he's going to let you tell her story without some turbulence? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Aisha had almost like what do they call that when what they had back in the days, those sores all over your hands and scars. She woke up. She did the next day after we taped her um doing the scene where she was trying to get to the neighbors. She woke up and had these blemishes all over her body. I mean, every attack that the enemy
Mm.
could try to do, he did before we got this film completed. But it is completed. Bless God. And it's a testimony to miracles happen every day. So we thank you for being with us. Um, we thank you for listening to the story. Leprosy, that's the name of it, Terry. That's what happened the next day. He did everything he could, and everyone,
Mm-hmm.
the videographer and all of us, we kept saying we must be covered and prayed up because he coming after us, y'all. So thank you for being with us tonight. Again, this is your girl Valerie McAllister with Sister Talk with Valerie. Listen, you can hear this again recorded on Untapped Music Radio at 7:30 on Friday and a replay on Saturday. Enemy, you ain't did nothing because we still got the story out. Hopefully, oh, Maisha's back. Let me let her back in. Can you hear Maisha?
Nope. Still can't hear you.
All right. Well, say good night. Say good night. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Oh
I
wow,
can't
devil.
hear anything.
Well, we're ending. We're ending. I love you. See y'all.